name is Ed Roxbury, and I'm here with a naval World War II naval officer, Mr. Luthur Rhine, and it's my privilege to be able to interview him this morning. Luthur, tell us a little bit about your early life as it started.
All right. My early life, I was born in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, and later on my parents moved to Ohio, where I went through the school system there, graduating from Warren C. Harding High School, playing basketball as one of the sports at Warren, and I was captain of the final year of the basketball team that finished 4th in the state that particular year. That would be Ohio State. And the city I lived in was Warren, Ohio. After graduating from Warren C. Harding in 1942, I had received a scholarship to W&J to play basketball for W&J.
Now, what was W&J?
Washington and Jefferson College, located in Washington, PA, a sort of a coal mining type area. Mm-hmm. And there I played basketball. In the meantime, sometime during the year, a group of military personnel on a recruiting type thing, coming to sign up people who wanted to join certain services. At the time, the Army was there, the Navy was there, the Marines were there, and the Coast Guard were there. And they stopped at W&J and they set up a recruiting type thing. And at the same time, they asked us all to undress, which we did. And you saw a whole floor filled with naked men wanting to become a member of the services. After I completed my physical, walking through and doing the physical, and the rest of them did the same thing, I decided that I preferred the Navy. And at that particular time, I was briefly interviewed as to what the results would be. They told me that when I got my orders, I would probably be sent to Bethany College, located in the Panhandle of West Virginia. And at that particular time, after that was over, why I waited I got the letter to as to when I was to join them up at Bethany, and it happened to be June of the I think the year would have been 1943. The year would have been that I went to Bethany College. Now I'm going to add, this is an ad lib. I'm going to add something to it. When I went to go to Bethany, I had no ride to get to Bethany, and no money to pay a way to get to Bethany. So I got out on Route 7, that's a major highway in Ohio, and hitchhiked down towards Bethany College, which was located on the other side of the Ohio River, and I was hitchhiking on the Ohio side of the Ohio River. And I got down to a location where the town I was to pick up a bus across the river was my spot to get across the river. Well, I looked and I said, how in the hell am I going to get across that river? At that particular time, I was just a medium swimmer, so I didn't want to try that. So I saw an old cowger down there by the river, and I asked him, how do you get across to that town over there? And he said, well, I can tell you how to get across there. If you have a dime, you go down to Riverside, and there's a raft down there, and there's an old man with a long pole, and you get on the raft and pay him the dime, and he'll take you right over the Ohio River to that spot. And that's exactly what happened over there. And over there, I caught the bus and went up into Bethany and went through the preliminaries of being given a physical up there and given a sailor's uniform. And the next, during that year, the studies were primarily math, Navy navigation, and other type military courses.
Now, you were accepted into the V-12 program.
Yes,
What was the V-12 program?
The V-12 program, that was the V-12 program. The V-12 program was a program of the Navy, and it was a program that took us through a 1 year of education, and was going to prepare us to become a Navy officer after passing the midshipman type thing. But anyway, at Bethany College, I did play basketball the whole year, and played on the varsity team, and we played such teams as Pitt, Notre Dame, and a few other schools. So at the end of the year, I was approved to have passed their course, the V-12 course at Bethany. And my assignment was to go to Notre Dame and go into a midshipman school of 4 months. And I did go to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame was a very interesting experience. The course was rather rigorous, and there was a number of fallouts. And of course, I didn't want to fall out. I didn't want to go home and say I fell out. And so I worked as hard as I could to get by that. But the tests were made somewhat easy. They were very tough tests. But what they did was they allowed you to bring your books that you used to study into the course, and take the test with the books. But you had to be able to work fast because the courses were the tests were timed. You had to finish them in a certain time. After staying at Notre Dame, one of the more interesting experiences I had at Notre Dame was the fact that we were in the dorm, and it was the Morrissey Hall at Notre Dame, and we were assigned by the first letter of our last name, and my name's Rhine, R-H-I-N-E, and I was seated with the R's, in the rooms with the R's. One day we were having a little kibitzing outside the hall, and everybody was saying, what does your dad do? And I came to my dad and I said, he's a steel worker. He's a steel worker, and he works in Republic Steel in Warren, Ohio. And well, the next kid said, my name's Ratner, and my dad is governor of Kansas. And that sort of shocked me a little bit. Governor of Kansas' son versus a steel mill son.
Well, you didn't have any Roosevelts in that R room as to where they were the son of the president, though.
No, we didn't have that. And everything proceeded. It was a beautiful experience being at Notre Dame. We weren't the only unit there. There was all sorts of units there, Marine, and the Army and Coast Guard, and it was a beautiful sight in the morning when you left your dorm and went into formation and had to do drills. This all over the campus, you would see these people marching and yelling the march information that they needed. I forget the calls they used to be, but
so after you did,
there would be like left, right, left, left, right, left, and then there was a few words which I'm not going to mention here with the marching. But anyway, that's how it ended.
So you graduated from Notre Dame in '44.
I graduated in Notre Dame in '44 as an ensign.
Yeah,
as an ensign.
Mm-hmm.
And
then where did you go?
Well, I received orders to go to a ship that was under construction. It was an AK 106 that was being built, and it was being built at Hoboken, New York. And I went there, and we stayed aboard. My first experience in getting aboard ship when I went up and saluted the officer of the deck, because I knew that much at least. But anyway, when I got aboard ship, I didn't know where to go. I sort of wandered around, and finally I found another ensign that was there, and I asked him, I gave him my room number that I had been assigned, and I went to my room number and then had a chance to get out and wander around and find out what it was all about. But
now, what was
it was a great experience, but it was a scary experience being aboard a ship being built.
Being built, huh?
Yeah.
So what was the purpose of the assignment of the AK?
Well,
the Union.
The AKs were ships that had about you had about 4 holes forward and 4 holes rear, and they went all the way down to the bottom of the ship. And one of the bottom floors, some of the bottom floors had concrete pourings in it to give them ballast, to give the ship ballast. But anyway, the next thing, I think, after going through about 3 months there of the ship being finished up and all that sort of thing, we went on a shakedown cruise out in Long Island Sounds, which was an interesting experience. And then the next thing was to proceed to Norfolk to have any repairs made to the ship that might have been discovered during the shakedown.
Then you were on your way.
Then on the way.
And where was your first assignment supposed to go?
Okay, we went to Norfolk, finished up, then headed towards the Panama, and we got to the Panama, and our first assignment was to stop in San Diego. And,
I understand there's some important cargo that had to be loaded in San Diego. Your initial was to go to Hawaii, but I understand that there was an emergency stop in San Diego.
Yes, in San Diego. Why, the skipper, we docked a wharf, and the load that came on was beer. And all the holes were filled with beer, and then locked down. And the skipper was afraid of that load. He was afraid because he thought the crew might be interested in that beer. And so we then proceeded to Hawaii. And once in Hawaii, the old man ordered the beer unloaded to a dock. And as he took the lids off the holes, what he discovered was a shock. He had stationed not necessarily lookouts, but he had stationed guards aboard on those holes, and when they took the lids off, all they found on the first levels were empty cans. So I imagine the skipper or the old man of the ship was rather shocked at the performance of his crew coming across the Pacific to Hawaii.
Well, that was a long trip.
Yeah. Then our next stop was Maui, and little or nothing. All we did was, all I recall doing it Maui, it was the town itself. The town itself, if anyone's been there recently, they know there's been a major change to that island. But the one thing we noticed, it was more like an old Indian town that you saw in Wild West pictures and that type of thing. It was just an old looking town.
So you were ordered to go to Guam, though.
Yeah. Then we were given the assignment to proceed to the Pacific and get under the command of I don't know who the particular admiral that was head of it, but there was the area that we went into had a lot of the islands like Guam, and Tinian and a few other small islands there.
What was it? The one island, was that Inuvik? Is that how you pronounce that one?
Yeah, Inawa, I think is the pronunciation.
I think there was a standing order for that as you passed that island.
Yeah, there was a standard order that we had a 5-inch cannon on the rear of the AK, and we were ordered to fire into the island, not so much to hit a target, but to disturb the remaining Japanese troops there and just disturb their sleep. That's about it.
Well, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Let's see.
So as you're going towards Guam, you received orders to come up with the USS Indianapolis.
Yes, we were going towards there, and we came up with. I happened to be the communications person assigned at that night, and one of the things that came over the communication was a word from the Navy Command of the Pacific that the Indianapolis had been under fire and was in trouble, and we were probably, I don't know how many miles we would have been behind, but it would have been a considerable number of miles that we were behind in Indianapolis. And later on, we all read about the tragedy that occurred with Indianapolis and the difficulty that the crew had, and that I think probably a great number of them were died in it, and probably I don't think any of them got free. It was a rather sad thing.
Indianapolis had just dropped off parts for the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And they were on their way back to Guam, and like you said, they were torpedoed and sunk in, what was it, 44?
It would have been it would have been in 44. No, it might have been. Could have been in 45 or 44.
Could have been in 45.
Yeah, it would. 44 was well underway. As far as my career was concerned, I might hazard a guess and say it was in 45.
Okay.
Okay. But anyway, we didn't have any major assignments other than to supply. We were sort of a supply ship. Our supply officer often would get requisitions from other ships and furnish them supplies. One of the things we used for entertainment aboard ship during the war was those concrete floors down at the bottom of the ship made wonderful basketball courts.
And you having a basketball scholarship earlier in your career.
And we played basketball. And every time we saw a ship, they would semaphore over to the ship and say, "We have a basketball team. Do you have a basketball team? Come on over." But anyway, we had a lot of intercrew battles, and there was one particular battle that I always remember, and that was the crew challenged us to the officers to a basketball game, which was a big mistake of the crew. But anyway, we went down and we played that game, and it got quite rough game. And the officers were no exception. The crew was no exception either. But it turned out to be quite a game, other than basketball.
Wow.
But during midpoint during the game, the executive officer during the halftime called us over and said, "I want you fellas to remember one thing. Once this ball game is over, you have to manage that crew, and you better not play ball when you play." So that put the roughness.
Kind of kibosh to that.
Yeah, that did left out the roughness.
So after that, you spent 1945 transporting troops and cargo around the Pacific.
Yeah, and then the final thing, we got word to go to Leyte Gulf and rehearse our amphibious boats landing on the beach and retracting from the beach, and we spent maybe a couple of weeks there doing that. We had LCVPs and LCMs aboard ship that were supposed to be used in a landing. Then we got orders to, well, we didn't know where we were going. We got orders to join a convoy, and we joined that particular convoy. It was a beautiful thing to see from the bridge because of the formations for miles and miles of ships getting together. And later on, the atomic bomb was dropped midway in our route towards Japan, but then the surrender occurred, and the surrender was to be held on Missouri. Mm-hmm. And we received word that we were to proceed to the Missouri, and we did. We started towards it, and on the way there, we found out that there were straits that were rather wicked, and you had to go through those straits in order to get to the harbor, Yokohama Harbor. That was the destination. And one of the assignments that I received at that point in time, I was a Lieutenant JG. I received a order from the commanding officer that when the pilot came aboard to guide us through those straits into Yokohama Harbor, that I was to take action anytime I saw an off guard or a strange move on the part of the Japanese pilot. Now, believe it or not, what occurred was the Japanese pilot did his job perfectly, made no such move, did nothing to interfere, and took the ship right into the dock in the harbor.
Do you think it might have been because he was the only Japanese person on board ship? That's probably correct. But one of the interesting things that that everyone noticed as we entered the harbor, they had a beautiful breakwater surrounding outside of the harbor to protect ships inside the breakwater, and it looked like it stretched for miles, but it really didn't stretch for miles. But anyway, it looked that way, and we saw in big letters, not just small letters, but big letters, Kilroy was here. He was every place, wasn't
he? Oh yeah, he was. He was all over the Pacific, and I don't know if Kilroy was over. I never was in Europe, the Europe war zone, but he might have been.
He was there also.
Also, yeah.
So you were discharged in June 6th, 1946.
Yes.
And where did you go from there?
Where did I go from there? Well, we headed back almost the way we came. We headed back to Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Our assignment was to proceed to San Diego. And in San Diego, we were very lucky. We got buoy 4142, and we hitched on to buoy 4142. It was inside the harbor, and it allowed us some nice liberties in San Diego because we were anchored right into harbor and just get a boat and go right over to San Diego. But that only lasted for a while. Pretty soon a battleship came along, and the harbor master evidently felt the battleship was in more need than we were, and we got kicked out into the ocean outside San Diego, where we dropped. We had to drop anchor and stay with an anchor out all the time while we stayed there. And then there was another interesting thing that was occurring, and that was we were preparing for the Marshall Island, the explosions that were to take place. So with a lot of ships that were either derelict or foreign ships that they were going to haul over, they were looking for officers to make that particular voyage and stay in Marshall Islands until the explosion I probably got over.
They approached you for that, right?
They approached me for that, but I sort of declined because I really wanted to get home and get back into school and that type of thing. So I declined the particular assignment.
And came back to Warren and tried to get into school.
Yeah, and the next thing that happened to me was I took with an ensign and myself. We took the railroad train up towards Chicago to check out. And one of the interesting experiences we had, we were always back in the club car, and one night in the club car, the ensign and I were sitting there, and a pretty woman came by, very pretty woman, and nicely dressed and everything, and seemed like a really nice person. And she asked if she could sit down with us. And we said, sure, sit down and have dinner with us. So she sat down with us, and later on we asked what her husband did. And she said, well, he's the mayor of Las Vegas. So it's just one of those little things that
One of those little tidbits there.
And the next thing, couple days in Chicago and physical exams again, and they were looking you over if you had any medical problems, and they were going to correct any medical problems you might have. And in a short time, I was out of Chicago, headed towards by train towards Warren, Ohio,
mm-hmm.
and there's where I've been ever since.
Okay, so after you were drummed out.
Yeah.
You went back to school, and which college did you get into?
I went back. One of the things I actually got out late in 46,
mm-hmm.
and late was a real disadvantage to someone who wanted to go to school, and the reason being, schools, all the better schools were taken up already, and you could write to all the schools, and I wrote to 4 or 5 or 6 schools, and same reply. No dice. We're filled up. We're filled up. We're filled up. And finally, I heard about Ohio University, located in Athens, Ohio, and they weren't filled up. And they not only weren't filled up, but the government had supplied sufficient amount of money down there to build extra barracks. And their enrollment suddenly went to about 15,000 at Ohio University. I don't know what it was prior to, but I know it wasn't 15,000 because they didn't have that type of facility. So I ended by getting a degree in business administration out of Ohio University, and then the next thing, seeking a job. And I decided to write a letter to Ben Fairless. Well, Ben Fairless was chairman of U.S. Steel, so I wrote a nice long letter to Ben Fairless, and I didn't even bother having it typed. I wrote it longhand, which he probably couldn't even read a longhand letter. But anyway, I wrote it because I thought that was the thing to do. And the next thing, I got a letter back from U.S. Steel. At that time, it was Carnegie, Illinois. And they invited me down to interview with what they referred to as their planning director. And I went down, and he offered me a job, and he said that I would be put in a 2-year training program. And what we would do is tour all the U.S. Steel plants, visit all U.S. Steel plants, speak to all top officials in Pittsburgh. And at the end of that, they would find an assignment for us, which they did. And I ended up working 32 years with U.S. Steel. And at that particular time, they began the shutdown period of their plants. And I was at that time working in Youngstown, Ohio, at the U.S. Steel plant and district in Youngstown, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And the offer came up. And it really wasn't an offer. It was almost you better do it. That they were going to be shutting down the various plants in the Youngstown area, and we would be, if there was a job available, reassigned to another plant. In this particular case, I decided to take my retirement at that time. And I took my retirement at that particular time. And it wasn't as if I wasn't looking for something else. And there was about three people with U.S. Steel at that time that I had made friends with. And we thought that one of the mills that were being shut down was a specialty plant, and this specialty plant had the hopes of gave the hopes that we could stay in business if we still ran it. So we took an offer. We took an offer to U.S. Steel, and after they looked at our offer from the three of us, they said, "Yeah, you have the talents. We know that, but where's the money?" That's what U.S. Steel said to us. And so the next thing, one of the members had to go out and search for the particular money that was needed to start up, and that was successful. And there were about 4 people, and I was one of them, that were considered founders of McDonald Steel Corporation. In Youngstown, and not in Youngstown, but in McDonald, Ohio. Mm-hmm. We started work in 1981 with about 100 to 120 employees, manufacturing specialties steel products. And U.S. Steel is still operating very successfully as of this date, with about 120 employees. Still rolling the product that the market seems to want to buy.
So during your time with U.S. Steel, I know that you got married.
Oh yes,
because
that was.
I've met your lovely wife, Jean, who is here with us, with you today. Yeah. And now, how many years have you been married? You and
we
Jean?
have been married 63 years. We were married in around 1956, and we have had when we got married, we were both interested in having a family, and didn't have to worry about anything because we started to have a family right away, and they came fast. 6 children.
6 children.
They're 6 children, and they're all living. And every one of them have college degrees. 3 of them have masters. And my one son finished number 1 in the graduating business class out of Columbia University. I don't recall the year, but he also that was for his master's degree, but he also had graduated from Dartmouth the 2 years before that. He went to Columbia, and he had worked 2 years prior to going to Columbia with General Electric in California, and then came back to graduate from Columbia.
Well, Luthur, I thank you for sharing your story with us today. And I know those that are going to be hearing your story, because it's going to be filed in Washington, D.C. eventually. And I know they're going to be intrigued with the escapades along the Pacific. A lot of battle, but some fun that was worked in along with it.
We left out the item when in the postman.
Yes, we left that out. I think that might have been cut out. If
I don't know, but it was 100% the truth. But the reason I thought it was an interesting story, officers have a reputation of not being kind towards enlisted men, but that's not really true. A lot of times the officers, at least the junior officers, are the front between the enlisted man and the senior officers, sort of giving a little protection to the enlisted man, especially when a guy does something that is actually calls for dismissal from the service and that type of thing, and it's nothing more than some stealing of something that he thought was his at the time, but so you try to soften the blow a little bit.
Well, there are good officers that go above and beyond the call of duty, so to speak. And
there was another. I was serving as officer of the deck, and this one fellow had been given a penalty of 3 or 4 days to this guy. And he was a sailor, and they gave liberty, and I'm officer of the deck. And this guy comes up and salutes. He says, "Mr. Rhine, going ashore?" I look at him and said, "You can't go ashore. You're supposed to stay aboard." And he said, "Oh, I got to get ashore." I said, "Go on, get out of here." But he goes over, and he gets in the same damn elevator as the captain.
Oh, good grief. Now, that was not a smart move.
No, that was not a smart move. But anyway, that just another story.
Well, we sure appreciate your stories. They were fantastic.
Okay.
And, like I say, they will be interesting to the people that come in the future generation looking back at World War II. Because, there's a lot of stories that some of them in combat, some of them in combat and recreational type of things, and some of them never left the shore of the United States. So we have all kinds of people that were serving, and they all did their job, and they did it fantastically, like you did.
Yeah, just one thing that I think is common among World War II veterans. I've talked to a number of them, and it's the way I feel. People will say in World War II, did you enjoy it? or did you, or would you serve World War II again? And you almost always say yes. Then you would ask the other question, and that is, if a new World War II would start, would you volunteer? They say no.
I think the age kind of disqualifies us.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just one of the things that, in my mind, I look at it that way. I enjoyed the experience, and there's memories that you never forget.
No, and it does make you grow up quickly.
Yes,
also.
you do. Yes, you do.
So
I think I was about 20 years old when I was a first division officer on the forward part of the ship. So you have to grow up fast.
You have to grow up fast.
You better learn how to handle a hawser. A hawser's a big rope that you use to tie up the ship. You better learn how to tie those knots.
Well, Luthur, thank you very much.
All right.